Hello friends, I'm Larry with Ride Stunt and Right, and today I'm with Andy DiBrino. Andy, it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
We are out at the DiBrino Ranch, checking out all the fun, cool stuff you have. And we are doing a rider profile today with Andy, so I want to talk about the beginnings. What did you ride when you first got your first motorcycle experience? I'm supposing you were a kid or something, and tell me about that.
Yeah, I was about 3.5 years old, maybe about 4, and I got a PW50. And my dad took me out to my grandparents' house. They have an airstrip. They fly airplanes, and that's where I learned how to ride the bike, was up and down the airstrip. And eventually he took me out to the motocross track. My dad was a motocross racer, so that's kind of where I cut my teeth for a long time, was racing motocross.
How old were you?
I think I was racing maybe closer to 5, but I know I was going down to like Albany and maybe even Thursday at Motocross before I was 5 years old. But I feel like I maybe started racing a little younger than that. I can't remember, but definitely was racing pretty much every week by the time I was 5 years old.
So how long did you do the motocross scene before you got your first taste of pavement?
I mean, I've raced motocross my whole life. Like, I never stopped, but I remember it was like 2007, and a friend of ours, I don't know who, was like, hey, you got to go race Supermoto out at McMinnville. And they had a Supermoto USA race, and the promoter was this gal who we knew from arena cross races she put on. So yeah, we got these street tires. I think they were scooter tires, and we threw them on one of our pit bikes. So I just ran the pit bike class and was hooked. And I remember my mom came out, and I was going like maybe 40-45 miles an hour down the straightaway, and she just lost it. Like, she just couldn't handle it, thought it was way too fast. And so yeah, it was my first taste of pavement. And then it wasn't long after that, my dad and I went to Laguna Seca, and then we were watching MotoGP and thought that was cool, and I had to go try that out too.
How old were you when you got your first knee? You probably got that at the Mac track then.
So after that little Supermoto experience, like, we bought wheel sets for, at the time I was racing a Super Mini, so a Honda CRF 150R. My dad had his 450, so we bought suspension, wheels, tires, and we just started racing Supermoto, like, really hardcore. And there were some other mini road racer kids out there, like Jeremy Coffey, Mackenzie Anshin, and a few other folks, but I was more into racing the Supermoto and the dirt sections and stuff, since that was more like motocross, which was what I was doing. So I don't really think I dragged a knee until 2008 when I started novice school. And before I even decided to go do OMRA, I got invited to the Red Bull Rookie Cup tryouts at Barber Motorsports Park. So my first ever time wearing road race leathers, the full face helmet, and riding a bike was on a 125 Grand Prix bike at Barber. And it was very odd, because I remember there was a lot of pressure, because you had like Kevin Schwantz and all these MotoGP like guys, and then 100 other kids, and they're like trying to coach us through like the event, how it's going to work. And I'm riding this bike I've never rode, and it's backwards shifting, and I remember like just having no idea what I'm doing, and I'm just pinning it, and I'm just going through the gears, and then I went the wrong way and like smacked my face in the windshield. So it was a really bizarre beginning and introduction to road racing, but it definitely got me hooked and got my dad's interest. So we got a CB160, and then I started OMRA novice school in 2008.
So 2008 was your first time actually then, well, like we said, you drug a knee. Do you remember which corner you drug? I mean, you're at Portland then, so you remember your first time?
I don't remember. It was, I was like, I think I just turned 13, or I might have been 12, I can't remember, but it was me, a kid named Cody Wood, TJ Hart. Like, there was like 3 or 4 of us kids that were doing our first year, and we're all racing the vintage class, because back then there wasn't a Ninja Cup or anything like that. We weren't racing those ultra lightweight bikes. So really, all those people, they're all racing the vintage bikes. So that was our way into it. And either that, or you hop on a 125 Grand Prix bike or a SV650. But that was kind of out of the cards, a little too expensive, and we were just had no idea what we were doing. So anyway, I'm pretty sure I remember taking my knee pucks off and scraping them in the pits and saying I dragged my knee before I really did drag my knee. I didn't, like, to some people's surprise, like, I wasn't good when I started. I was really bad. And honestly, the only reason why I even stuck with it was because I was just having too much fun screwing around on my pit bike with my buddies in the pits. So if it weren't for that, I don't know if I would have stuck with it. But I don't know. I'd say maybe the first place I drugged my knee was like turn 4 or turn 9. I can't remember, but I remember getting lapped in the CB 160 races, and there used to be like 12 lap races. You know how long that is on a CB 160?
I can't even just.
Man,
that's a long time out.
I mean, any race, I mean, we only do 10 lappers now, but they used to all be 12 laps. But yeah, 12 laps on a CB 160 was...
yeah, half an hour almost.
Oh, God. It was a half-hour race. Yeah, it sucked. So I don't miss those bikes.
It's so funny for me to hear this because the knee down just happened to me first time at my age last year, first time ever. And so when I ask people, you know, I'm always expecting, I never know what I'm going to hear, but to hear that from you and to hear that you started off less than stellar just doesn't, you know, all of us that know you, it's like, what? That can't be Andy DiBrino.
Yeah.
So
it wasn't like a blazing hot start. Like maybe the first weekend I was kind of battling with my buddies who were my age, and like on the supermoto track, like they could be riding their bikes, their mini road race bikes, and I could be on my 150R. Like I'll be riding supermoto style, they'll be road racing, and I'd be beating them. But something about the road race track and me trying to ride the way they rode on proper bikes, like I just didn't take to it initially. I mean, it was a lot different, but luckily my dad made me stick with it, and I made some good friends. And
what was your first proper road bike up here then?
Well, so I did a year of 160s, and I think it was maybe the start of 2009. Like over the off season, we'd bought RS 125. I think we ended up with a couple, and we were just kind of testing the waters with those things because obviously there's a lot of work involved in running a 125. And anyway, I remember actually riding my CB in practice, and I think it locked up in turn 9, and I crashed, and that was it. I was like, I'm done with this bike. I hated it. Like, didn't want to ride it. So we just kind of focused on the 125 bikes, and at the time, it was Devin McDonough, Rob Tatum, myself, Mackenzie Anshin, and some other folks racing those. And so that was maybe my first real proper road race bike was the 125s. But Devin was quite a bit better. He'd been road racing a long time, so he was pretty much winning the races. And then now and then, it was maybe Mackenzie and I, like, getting on the podium. I remember there's a few other people that were pretty good. But I just remember being kind of too big for a 125 at that age. I mean, at this time, I'm like 14, and Mackenzie, she's a few years younger than me, but she's like half my size. So, like, I'll just pass her in the corners, and then we'll get to the straightaway, and she'll blow past me down the straightaway. So I would say the 125 year was pretty frustrating because I just was too big on the bike, and she was kind of the only person I had to race with, and I don't know. I didn't really care for the 125s a whole lot, So
how long before you made a bid for an actual championship in road racing?
I would say, so in 2010, I moved up to SV650s, and my dad started road racing on an SV650. So that was a really cool year because we were racing together, but I remember, you know, missing some rounds because I had other interests. And so, you know, here we are. Like, I still haven't really found myself progressing a whole lot, or really, you know, getting to the point where I'm super competitive yet. And I don't know. I came out and did a few races, and I don't know. I think eventually I kind of started finding some people to race with, and it's all about having people to race with. Some of these classes, you know, when you start, like, you're either so bad you have no one to race with, and it's kind of hard, but eventually you just keep pushing through it, and then you catch up to that next guy, and you're battling with him, and then you get good enough to where you're beating him, and then you're just kind of working your way up the field. So that's kind of what I did, and I think what actually helped was I was actually racing a supermoto bike too. So I was racing a 450 and like ultra lightweight super bike, or excuse me, lightweight super bike. So I'm like riding that, right? And I know how to ride that bike pretty well. So starting to race the 450 and lightweight super bike while starting to race the SV650 in some classes, I think that both kind of helped because I knew how to ride the 450 and I was getting fast on that, like basically as fast as I was on the SV. And I also remember my dad had me running these, I don't know what kind of Bridgestone tires they were, but I remember we were talking to Barry, and I was just like having a mental block. I'm like, Dad, I can't go around the corner. The bike wants to crash. And I'm doing like 22s, 23s on the SV, so I'm going super slow. And Barry is like, what tires are you running? And, you know, I think he switched us onto Dunlops, and then boom, like I was competitive all of a sudden. Like I dropped like 5 seconds. Like I was doing like 17s, 18s, like starting to battle for podiums. So like kind of the end of 2010, I got a few podiums, and I was really like starting to have a good time. And so that kind of helped. I'd say Barry really helped to kind of dial me in at the end of 2010. Starting battling with Devin, who was winning the SV championships that year, and having a fun time racing with my dad. And 2011 was the year that I was like a championship contender in the SV classes, and I ended up winning. There was 4 classes at the time. I think it was middleweight GP, 650 twins, middleweight super sports, those kind of classes, middleweight superbike, and I won all 4 championships plus the lightweight superbike championship on my 450. So yeah, 2011 was the year that things clicked, and I really kind of found my calling in the road race stuff. And then 2012 it was 600 time.
So what was your 600 bike of choice then?
R6. It was pretty easy. We bought ex Lenny Hale bike, and I don't know if you know who Lenny Hale is, but I'm sure a lot of your viewers know who he is. He's an AFM, ex-AMA road racer. I mean, super fast guy. So I got his old bike, and first time riding it in April of 2012, it was wet, wet track day. But I think my first weekend I did 11s, and I think by the second weekend I was doing 9s, and by the third weekend I think I was doing 8s, and I won my first race. So the progression was pretty quick, and then a few months later I was taking track records, and by the end of that year I set the 600 lap record at, I believe it's a 107.2, and I think we did that in September, and nobody, including myself, has ever gone faster on a 600 since I did that year in 2012, which is kind of trippy because I feel like I've gotten better. I have a couple of theories about it, but yeah, that was a pretty incredible year. I remember breaking the track record at the Ridge, the outright record on my 600, and then crashing a lap later, breaking my hand. And then luckily there was like 3 weeks before the next Ulma race, and in that 3 weeks the swelling in my hand went down just enough to where I could grip the bar. And then I was racing PIR with Ryan Sutton. He was kind of my rival at the time, and yeah, battling and winning races, and all was good until the cool down lap, and I took my hand off the bar, and then that's when all the shooting pain went into it. But yeah, that was a really cool year racing the 600s. And yeah.
Did I hear you right that you did that your first year on the R6? Or
Yeah.
would this have been your like second or third year?
No, that was my very first year. So yeah, first weekend on R6 I did 11s, and it was kind of a crappy weekend. It was April where it was like, mixed conditions. Like we had a couple dry races, but it was cool. We had grids of like 30 guys back then, and now there's not as many, but we've kind of had a resurgence to the 600 class, which is awesome. But yeah, back then there was legit like 30 plus guys, and I remember kind of just starting in the back and working my way through, and I think my best finish that first weekend might have been 7th, but at the time, the 600 guys were, Chris Anshin, Matt Prestine, and Devin McDonough. Like, I can't remember who else, but I mean, really fast guys. And Devin that year was his first like full season doing AMA pro road racing, so I didn't really get to race with him a whole lot. But yeah, it was a pretty killer year. And San Federico was racing a lot on the 750s and 600s back then. And but yeah, it was that third weekend, I believe I got my first win. And then from there on, like I just kind of went on a tear, and I think I might have won a couple championships my first year in the 600 class. I know I was like second or third for sure. But
that kind of a run on a 600 with the Northwest tracks, particularly, 600 are so great. I think they're like the perfect size for these tracks. What was the draw to go to 1,000? I mean, other than the unbelievable challenge and then that speed, and what was the road?
That happened in 2013, and I mean, I've been racing Ryan Sutton for a couple years, and like just never have raced a fiercer guy. I mean, every weekend we were just like, fist fighting out on the track, basically. Buddies in the pits, but just beating each other up on the track. And I'll say I think I kind of had the edge on him just because I've been racing at PIR longer, and I have really good racecraft. Like, I don't know what it is, but that's definitely my strong suit. Like, even when I'm not the fastest, like, I feel like I have enough experience, like I can just outsmart people. And so we had a lot of those races where, like, I would just pull something last lap and get him, and he'd be mad, and his dad would be mad, and it's so fun to look back on. And like, we love each other to death, and but yeah, we were pretty fierce competitors. And yeah, so it was 2013. Ryan got a Gixxer 1000, and at the time Alan Schmidt was still racing, and 2013 was his last full season. So we come into the finale, and some AMA Pro Road Racer kid, Stefano Mesa, was coming into town riding a Ducati Panigale for Ducati Seattle. And there was just like Ryan was going to race 1,000, Stefano was racing a 1,000. It was Schmidt's last race. Like, I just wanted to race a 1,000. I'm like, man, I can't miss out on this. So I remember posting on Facebook, hey, anyone got a bike to lend me? And that's like kind of a crazy order, because I think at the time I was like 19 or maybe 20. And no, I think I was 19. And anyway, Jason Duty replies, he's like, hey, I got a Gixxer 1000, like, I'll bring it out. And my dad's just like pulling his hair out, like, this is a bad idea. If you crash it, like, oh man, I don't want to buy another bike. But anyway,
I love that it was Jason.
Yeah,
because he's one of these personalities at the track anyway, but he has such a great passion for this sport and getting people into it. I love that about him.
I think he kind of knew, like, it would be kind of cool to see, like, it just had, like, everything had just developed where there's just all this anticipation, and I think just getting me out there was going to add a lot to it. And like, I had been the only other guy to win a Formula Ultra race that year on a 600. I mean, Alan Schmidt won every race except for a rain race that I won on my 600. So, like,
so you outright won that race on a 600, because I haven't seen that since I've been watching.
It was a wet race. It was a wet race back in like May of 2013, and yeah, I won in the wet. And so, but yeah, no one had like legit beat Alan in like a couple years at least in the dry, like nobody. And we had, as we do now, we got these guys from out of town, from AMA or AFM, that come out and haven't really done anything. I mean, they're competitive, but the local guys, we kind of rule the track, I feel like. So anyway, yeah, I borrowed that bike, and immediately, doing sixes. And at the time, there was only like 3 or 4 guys that had ever done sixes. So that was kind of incredible. And me and Sutton, and Schmidt, all 3 of us duked it out. And there's some cool pictures of me passing Alan and like on the brakes on turn 1. And it was pretty cool. I remember the way I remember the race. I think Sutton was just kind of hanging around there the whole time. And something happened to me out of turn 4 in the last lap. And like, I almost crashed. So Sutton and Schmidt go by. And then I got this crazy double draft down the back straightaway. And it's last lap. Like, I'm pretty tired because I'm not used to racing 1,000. Like, I'm just used to racing 600. So something happened. I got this crazy double draft. I'm kind of out of control. I blow by him. Like, I'm not going to make the corner at all. Like, it's one of those deals where I'm like, I almost had to get back on the gas because I thought I was going to hit Alan. Like, he's tipping in for 7, and I'm still, like, pretty far behind him, but there's no way I'm making the corner, and I'm just going to hit him. So I'm pretty sure I just stopped braking, went by him. Like, I went through the dirt across 7 and 8. I kept it on the track, and I totally could have, like, continued and won the race, but
you didn't want to win it cutting the corner, you mean? Or?
Out of control pass, cutting the track. Like, I'm pretty sure that would be cheating, technically. So I let him by, got 3rd, and I was kind of like, oh man, I need to change my underwear because that was super scary. But that was kind of cool, though.
For those that don't know, that you went through there at 100-ish plus.
I went through there faster than anybody's ever gone through there.
Because it's a 100-mile corner now with you guys.
I mean, we're running 6s, and it's like last lap we're going deep, and I went by like an extra like 15 miles an hour faster. So I'm pretty sure no one has ever cut the track through the chicane there faster than I did. I mean, it was insane. But yeah, I just remember, like, getting that double draft, not really expecting it, and like my hands and arms are fatigued. I just can't really like control the bike that great. So it was one of those moments where it was almost disaster, but I just pulled one out of my ass on it and just made it happen. But it was such a fun weekend. So like we ended up buying that bike after that weekend because of just how successful it was.
Wow.
And yeah, me and Sutton doing sixes that first weekend. And yeah, I think at the time after that there was like just 5 of us that had ever done that. And Schmidt went out on top. We didn't beat him, but yeah, that kind of set the tone for 2014. You know, I'd done a little bit of AMA Super Sport stuff at the time, but like 2014 was really the first year that like Devin McDonough and I like we're best friends, but like we've been doing different things for a few years and like never really got to race each other straight up. So 2014 just started this incredible year for the both of us. We both ran AFM and OMRA full time on our 600s, and we ran just 1000s mostly at PIR. I don't remember racing the 1000 really at all at AFM. And I remember Devin raced a little bit at the end of the year at AFM, but yeah, that just kind of just started a pretty incredible championship chase for the both of us. I won like the first 3 races of the season. I think Devin won the middle 6 races, and then I won the last 3. Because at the time it was still a 6-round series, but 2 Formula Ultra races a weekend. So yeah, between the both of us, we won all the races, and it came down to the last race of the year. And unfortunately, he just edged me out in the championship. Like we both had a couple of weekends where we blew up motors, but I blew up 2 and he blew up 1. So that was kind of the you know, the nail in the coffin, but it couldn't have been really any closer. It was probably the closest championship chase in a long time. And, you know, the last 3 weekends we broke the track record back-to-back weekends. So he did a 106 flat in July, and then I did a 105.9 in August and was the first person ever to get into the 105 lap time range. And then in September, Devin broke the track record chasing me. I was turning mid-5s, and he got a crazy lap and did a 105.3, which stood for 4 years until I broke it last year. So, yeah, that was a fun year racing my best friend. It was definitely, you know, it was tough racing your best friend, but also at the same time so much fun. Like I look back at that year, and that was probably my most favorite year of all of them, just because of how hard we raced each other and how much we trusted each other on the track. Like there's just nobody I would rather race now than him.
I don't think anybody can really put a label on how cool it is when we're out here doing this sport with our friends, with people that we enjoy doing it with. It makes it so much funner when you're on the track with your friends.
Yeah, I mean, I consider most people at the track my friends. I mean, pretty much everybody. There's a few people that that I race against that's like, they're my friends, but I don't really like racing with them. So yeah, there's a few people I really like racing. Like I really enjoyed racing Ryan Sutton. You know, I knew he would race me hard, but clean. And I mean, we had some moments where we were bumping each other, but like it was just cool, hard racing. I like that. But yeah, there's some people out there that like I really don't like racing with. They're sketchy. Yeah, I don't want to really say more about that.
So
but
in 2017, you got your championship on that R1, and you know, hearing the R1s is, and your bike particular, you and Pat O'Connor, you know, those R1s going down the front stretch, man, that made me have to go get an R1. They're just so cool sounding. But what a year you had that year, and won it outright on that bike. And that's a really special bike that you put together.
Yeah, that bike I got at the end of 2016, and the first time I rode it was at Chuckwalla at a CVMA race, and man, I just clicked with the bike. Like I hadn't ridden the bike or any road race bike for like 4 or 5 months. Just hopped on that thing, broke one of their track records in the superbike classes, and then I was beating Josh Herron in one of the classes, and then their shootout, which is like the equivalent of our Formula Ultra event. I was battling with Benny Solis and Josh Herron for the win in that, and I ended up crashing like halfway through. But yeah, I just clicked with that bike. I mean, just to go to a track I've never been to and basically break their track record and win some races, and then come close to winning that shootout race with a guy like Josh Herron. That was pretty cool. Although I will say, Josh was one of my buddies in that race. It was like his first time ever riding that bike, so it wasn't really like straight up beating him, but
hey, you'll take it, man. That's
but
cool.
I mean, hey, it felt pretty cool. I was pretty stoked about it. But yeah, that bike's pretty cool. I mean, I basically bought that off of some other racer. Like, he rode it twice and it scared him, so then I got a crazy good deal on it, and I liked the bike. But man, I blew up a lot of motors that year, and unfortunately kind of found out down the road that it was kind of something on my part I was doing wrong, the way I was riding the bike. And so I haven't had any issues this year at all. I mean, I had a couple issues last year, but I remember changing a few things in the way I was riding PIR, and that's basically the weekend I broke the track record. Like, I just changed a few little things the way I rode the bike, and some of it was advice from my dad and Eric just because they were looking at data. And so anyway, I know the R1s, they kind of have a history of having some problems, and there are some problems that just are weak parts, like just stuff happens, right? And especially with that bike, but I wasn't helping the cause. But this year, things been great, and unfortunately, I'm selling it just because it's like 3 years old now, and I can't collect contingency. I haven't been able to collect contingency since 2017. So for me, it's just purely just because I need to get a new bike to start making some money. But it's been my favorite bike ever. I love that thing. The sound is wicked. Yeah, I love the way that Yamaha rides.
Last year, watching you guys chasing that down, I think everybody knew that it was coming. You guys you could throw a blanket over the top group of you, pushing each other. 3 of you guys made it into the fives the day that you broke the record. Ryan Sutton did. Wasn't Kevin Pinkstaff the other one that got into the fives?
And maybe Coffee. I mean, yeah, there was like a bunch of guys, but what was kind of crazy about that, so here I am. I'm not racing the whole series. Like, I had nothing to lose. And, of course, they had the bounty, the money that they were offering if someone broke the track record. So, I don't know. I just came in with nothing to lose. I was going fast in practice. I was feeling good. I ran the Formula Ultra race. I did some mid-5, so it was like, okay. Like, I wasn't really thinking about it that much until after Formula Ultra when I was, like, about 4/10 off the record. And I was like, okay, we are in the ballpark now. Like, now it's time to really think about this and get serious. And so I went out for Open Super Sport, and the conditions almost didn't allow it because it wasn't a particularly warm day. It was like maybe 70, like low 70s, kind of partly sunny. So it was just kind of one of those days in races where it's like it's all or nothing. Like, it's going to be now or it's going to be never, basically. And I remember giving myself, I basically let everybody go off the start. I gave him a pretty big gap. Like, everybody that I talked to after the race, they thought I gave him way too big of a gap. Because
I thought you were I saw the start of the race.
Yeah,
I thought, you're not going to catch up with
Yeah, I gave him like a 5-second lead or larger. And 5 seconds doesn't sound like a lot, but it's basically like I'm entering turn 1 as they're like going into 3.
And they were running in a pack.
Yeah,
3 of them were.
and they're doing 5s.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. It ended up just being the perfect amount of space. I mean, I totally winged it. Like, there's no way I could have like known exactly how great it was going to work out. But yeah, I just freaking threw down some fast laps. Like, I just rode harder than I ever rode before. I rode within my limits, but when you're racing for a championship, you're not always riding that hard unless you're Marc Marquez. Like, you're going to ride hard enough to win and to get the job done. And whatever that is, it's usually a little less than what you're really capable of, at least for me. So I remember that race, it was like, okay, like, I'm going to get on the gas sooner. I'm going to get on the gas harder. I'm going to go on the brakes later. And I just had nothing to lose. And I remember just chipping away. I didn't just set the first lap and do a lap record. It was like I started out high 5s, and I was shaving about a tenth a lap. And I remember a couple laps just being stuck. And then thinking, oh man, it's not going to happen. I'm starting to get tired. But it was just because I'm giving it 110%. Like, I'm riding harder. So I'm wearing myself out. And that was when I think I actually smoothed out, and then I dropped the time. And it was only a tenth, right? I mean, I'm barely like, I'm going around the track doing like a 105.4, which is like a tenth above the old record. And I'm just trying to think as I'm out there, I'm like, how can I just like squeeze out another tenth? So it was just like the most minuscule amounts of like just a little extra gas, a little earlier, just like collectively over the whole track. And I remember coming by and seeing the lap time, and I'm like, I think I just broke it. Like, my lap timer, it's not always perfectly accurate, so I just didn't give up then. I kept going. So I actually broke the track record maybe 2 or 3 laps in a row. But yeah, I mean, I was just giving it everything I had, just trying to just literally just giving it everything I had. Everything the bike had, the tires had, I had. It's like, I've been around that track so many times. Like, it's so hard to go faster than you've gone before, because it's kind of, I don't know, when you've been racing it as long as I have, like, you feel like you know everything there is to know. So it's like, what can you do? You know, you can only get on the gas so hard or brake so late before something happens and you crash or you go off the track. So it was just kind of collectively, everything came together, like the track temperature, the tires, the tire choice, my mental state, my riding, like just everything. It was just the perfect storm. And then I remember the next day, you know, not feeling anything like I did on Saturday. Like, wasn't going the same pace. Like, it's just crazy. You know, the very next day, completely different.
Ryan said he was going after the record that next day. He just could not handle the idea that you got the record the day before. And I remember talking to him that night, and he said, I'm breaking it tomorrow. He says, I'm breaking it tomorrow. And how it, like you said, it has to be collective. Everybody's got to be going after it, or it isn't happening.
Yeah, I mean, he maybe tried to do the same tactic I had, but like I said, it was just a lot of things coming together, and there's a reason why the track record stood for 4 years. I mean, it wasn't easy, and a lot of things have to go right, and it's not as simple as waking up and just saying, I'm going to break the track record today. Like, it's just, I mean, even this year we didn't break the track record. Jeremy and I, we rode hard, we rode close. I mean, we got within a few tenths of it, but yeah, it just didn't happen. So, you know, will it happen next year? Maybe. We don't know.
So we have AFM coming to the Ridge next year, which a lot of us are excited about, that the Northwest gets to have,
Road America?
Road America, sorry.
Road America.
Yeah. And so here Moto America is going to be there, and we're all going to be up there checking it out. You're going to be riding in it. I mean, what's it going to be like racing this close to home in a big race on a national scene?
Well, hopefully I'll be there. I don't know what I'm doing for sure next year, but obviously if I can make it, I'll make it. But it'll be cool. I don't really know what to think, just because it's not my favorite track. Like, I used to really like it, but I really don't like what they did with the ridge turn. Like, I don't know. I had a good time racing there this year, but I remember last year it kind of made me like not like the track. Like, I just had a bad weekend. And
which turn was that? Because I've only rode it this year, so I don't know.
So it's like the back straightaway, and then you take that super sharp, tight left, and then go down the hill.
Yeah.
Right before you enter the pits. So that's the ridge section. It's like turn 13. Yeah.
Yeah, I only know it that one way, where you go to the end of it and it just kind of
so
drops
slow.
off really slow.
It used to be a lot better. It used to be not as dramatic and sharp and slow. Even before, it kind of sucked. I don't like it now, but the rest of the track's pretty good. But yeah, I had a bad year last year. I crashed in turn like 1B and pretty fast, and I don't know.
1B really fast. That's like
that's one of
the
those
fastest corners out there.
Yeah, it's just one of those tracks. It's like it just, I don't know. For me, it's like, depending on how I'm doing, I either like it or I don't. But it'll be cool for the Northwest for sure to have a race out there. It's just, man, it's really hard to picture what it's going to look like, because the track isn't finished. Like, they haven't even put the full race surface on it yet. They've only done their first surfacing, like basically when they built the track. So.
And stands and everything.
I mean the whole thing, it's so unfinished. So I don't know. I'm sure it'll be cool. They got a lot of work to do. I'm excited to have a local race. Like, that could definitely help me. But I don't think it would be as helpful as it would be if like PIR came to PIR. If Moto America came to PIR, that would definitely be a different story. But for me, the Ridge, it's one of those tracks where like I haven't rode it that much to where I feel like I have much of an advantage. I mean, I definitely feel like I have an advantage, but I don't know that track the way I know PIR.
With us getting Indy cars at Portland, I kind of thought that if a track was gonna get visited, it would be PIR before any of the other tracks. So I thought that was odd that they went there when we already have the stands, we have stuff to the infrastructure.
The main problem is there's no bridge into the pit, so you can't really run a race of that level without having a bridge. Just because if anything happens, you have to shut the track down to get people across. Like, yeah, PIR is logistically perfect. Like, there's so many things about it that would make it perfect, but the main reason is, yeah, we don't have a bridge, so it just makes it hard for the race to operate the way it needs to without having that bridge. And there might be a few safety concerns with walls and stuff. Like, I know Moto America, they've sent officials to inspect the track, and I think it'd be great, but I don't know, I think some people would be sketched out. But, you know, some people are sketched out about Seattle, and there's parts about the ridge.
I hear that all the time about Pacific.
There's parts about the ridge that sketch me out. So I don't know, I feel like every track has something that's going to be like, well, that should be better. I mean, I know some tracks where you don't have to worry about walls, but you got to worry about ditches or drop-offs. Like, there's always something. So I don't know, I love PIR. I definitely would like to see a national there, but I think PIR has to do a few things just to accommodate the people a little bit better in the pits. But yeah, it's super cool to have a race at the ridge. I'm excited about it, especially if I can come race it.
Now, I knew you did other things, but when you got a hold of me earlier a couple of months ago and said, hey, I'm going to go do this thing. I need to practice on a kart track. Let's go out and hang out. So we go out to the Mac track, and I'm getting to see you on a bike that I had not seen you on. That wasn't it a KTM? Is that
yeah,
what that
790
was?
Duke.
Yeah, and watching you do your thing out there. And what I remember is at one point you came in and you looked over at me and you go, yeah, I think I'm good. And let's go ride the other bikes. It was like you could just see it. You were riding so good, and I thought, okay, he thinks he's good. We'll see how all that goes. You were practicing for a really, really cool event. It was the first time ever.
Yeah, Nitro World Games in Utah. So that was part of the Super Hooligan National Championship, which I've won the first 2 years, and right now I'm sitting second in points, a few points down from first, and still have a shot at winning it going into the last race this month. But yeah, Nitro World Games, so that's put on by Nitro Circus and Travis Pastrana and all his partners, and pretty cool race. You know, I had all the flat track guys there, including Joe Kopp, who's my championship rival. He's an ex-AMA Grand National flat track champion, so he's won at the highest level in the world. Super tough guy to race against. And then you had your wild cards like Pastrana and some other guys, and including Danny Eslick, you know, Daytona 200 winner, and multiple-time AMA race winner in road racing, and had Stevie Bonzi, who's an ex-Moto 2 and Moto 3 racer, actually back when it was the 250 and 125 Grand Prix. So yeah, I just had some really stiff competition, but yeah, I went out there and got the win. And
that had to have been pretty cool in qualifying. I remember we were watching really closely that in qualifying you were going out when Travis was coming in, and you guys passed each other on the way out. Was that kind of cool? Did you give like a little nod, like
he nodded? He gave me a nod. Yeah, he gave me a nod. That's pretty sweet. Yeah, he was the last guy to go out. Like I was the last person to go out and set pole position, and Travis was the last guy to go out and try to beat it. And so I wasn't really worried, but it was super cool to see my idol and just have him, you know, give me a head nod. And I was just super surreal. Been looking up to that guy forever. I mean, everything I try to be is just basically like Travis. He's inspired me. You know, met him when I was probably 6 or 7 and just made a pretty big impact on me and throughout my life. And so yeah, that was super neat to basically be at his event and win it and race with him. I mean, I just couldn't have had a better time. And then at the after party, I got to see him, so that was cool, downtown Salt Lake. So yeah, it's just super surreal.
We were off the couch yelling. Yeah, we were just so pumped when it happened. I didn't know and realize that you were as versatile as you are. You know, what you're able to do on the dirt, in oval track, which is what you're doing with the Hooligans, and you also do stunting too, where you have this big ramp set up and you go flying up doing all the crazy stuff. I mean, you are unbelievably versatile for being as good as you are. Usually when people are versatile like that, they're okay at one and okay at the other, but you're really competitive in everything you do. It just blows me away.
Thanks. Yeah, I think part of that is, yeah, just from the young age, you know, being a motocross rider, and I feel like starting out with motocross is just going to help you with everything in long term, right? So if I would have started out being just a street bike rider and then got into the dirt late, I wouldn't be anywhere where I am now. But just having that background riding motocross and then riding the supermoto was a really great way to get introduced to asphalt, and mixing it up with something that I already knew, which is motocross, and then getting into the road racing, and then eventually getting into flat track. Flat track was like the last thing I got into. That only happened about 5 years ago. But yeah, just racing everything collectively. But man, where I really feel like I built my bike skill was just those times when I was a kid screwing off in the pits, riding my mini bike at PIR, just playing in the grass, sliding it around, doing wheelies. Like I really want to credit a lot of my bike skill to just playing around, not actually the racing part. Like racing, you're so like zeroed in on one thing where you're not really as open to learning. Like whereas like when you're just playing around, like you do whatever you want. So I feel like that's how I got to be where I'm at. And yeah, I've been doing pro road racing, pro flat track, pro motocross.
Well, that was one of the questions
supermoto.
that you just answered, which is, you know, is a lot of guys, they're instructors, and a lot of us can say, well, we've ridden with guys that instruct and they've given us pointers and things, but seat time is huge. All of them even tell you, you know, no substitute for getting out and being on the bike.
Yeah, seat time is huge. I mean, yeah, there's no replacement for that. And I didn't even get any professional coaching in road racing until I was already going into my second year of Moto America, and that was back in 2016. So yeah, I started my road racing career in 2008, and I never got real coaching except for novice school at PIR. Yeah, I never really took a real school. So yeah, 2016 came around and I worked with Ken Hill at the Ridiculous Racing School, and it just changed my life. And so much about that school I could apply to every type of riding I do. And that was definitely some of the best money I ever spent. And but luckily I had all the seat time prior to that, and it just kind of having Ken and a few other coaches just kind of help just refine a few things for me. That took me to the next level for sure.
It's that combination. You have to have seat time, and then having good instruction is huge. Especially now you're at a point where, you know, getting pointers here and there from these top level guys is a big deal. You find yourself now being one of those guys. I know there are a lot of people that have come to you and you've instructed on track. You do that now at various levels. What are you doing with some of that now?
Yeah, I started doing some schools like back before I worked with Ken Hill. Like obviously I knew enough to start teaching to some degree, but yeah, really when I worked with Ken in 2016, that really kind of helped me establish an understanding of certain things I did that I didn't really know why I did them, maybe, or just things like that. But yeah, and then now I have a terminology that I learned from Ken that a lot of people will speak, because a lot of people have worked with Ken Hill. So yeah, I've done schools with Ken Hill before. I've done my own schools. You know, I've worked with him at the Ridge before, and then we've done a school at Salem. We got a school coming up at Salem this next month. So yeah, I do some certain types of teaching. I did like a road racing type school at Mac Track back when I had a Ninja 300, and I had some folks come out there, and that was super cool. I'd like to do more of that. So right now I'm trying to figure out how I can get some bikes so I can have these things to teach at certain places. So my goal is to get a bike for Mac Track so I can teach at Mac Track. My goal is to get maybe a ZX6 or a ZX10, just dedicated track day bike so I can actually teach at track days, because that's been the biggest miss for me. Is I have all these people that want to work with me at PIR, but it's just not economical to do it on my race bike. So yeah, the goal is next year have like a track day teaching bike, and then something for Mac Track. But yeah, I'm doing some flat track schools this winter, and then I'm doing a school with Ken Hill that's more of a road race school in the dirt. So yeah, just doing a variety of different things. But yeah, I feel like coaching definitely helps teach me and kind of reinforce all the things I'm trying to practice and master every day. And but yeah, just really looking forward to doing that stuff next year.
So biggest goals for next year on the racing scene, where do you see yourself putting that carrot out there saying this is the thing I really want to try and go after next year?
Or like I'm definitely waiting on schedules from Super Hooligans. I mean, that's been for sure my breadwinner. So everything is going to kind of revolve around that, as it has last year and this year. that's what I do to support myself. So, likely going to try to chase the title at that again. And if we can fit a whole OMRA season into the schedule, I would like to do that, especially now that there's 4 combined rounds with WEMRA. And so we'll see. It's too soon to tell. I mean, I have ambitions to win another Hooligan championship. Of course, I have ambitions to win more club #1 plates. I want to win a Moto America race. I haven't done that yet. I've gotten a second and a third. So one of the thirds was in Stock 1000. The other one was Super Stock 600, which isn't a class anymore. But so yeah, I'd say if anything, if next year is like what it was this year, I'll just focus on Super Hooligans, try to win that championship, and then I'll make all the other Moto America and OMRA, WEMRA races I can, and just try to win the club races, maybe try to break some track records. I mean, for sure, the goal is to break track records next year. I'm going to build a new bike, so I have some high hopes with that, and I definitely want to win a Moto America race and at the least podium. So I'd say next year will look a lot like this year, but just hoping to do a little better.
Right on. Well, for those of us that are getting to watch, can't wait to see what it is that you're going to be on next year. And for you guys that are in the area in any of these events, look Andy up, because he's out. He makes it a regular visits as often as he can. He's at those tracks, and for $10 you can come see him at PIR and watch this caliber. So come out, watch the races, and don't miss it. Andy, I really appreciate you taking the time with us today.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a good time.
See you guys next time.